Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're to be filling out my 2022 March Madness bracket. Inside today's video, I'll be going over every single game from the round of 64 all the way until the end of the video, where we will be seeing who I believe is going to be crowned as the 2022 national champion, who I believe is going to be winning the 2022 March Madness tournament. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure to leave a like on today's video. And while you're down there, please make sure that you leave a comment on today's video and let me know who you guys believe is going to be in the Final Four, and then who you guys believe is going to ultimately be crowned the champion of 2022 March Madness. So without further ado, let's get on into the video, and we'll begin in the West. Starting off with the first game in the West, we're going to go with the 1 versus 16 matchup of Gonzaga versus Georgia State. Now, Gonzaga made it all the way to the national championship game last year and ultimately lost to Baylor. This year, it is going to be very easy to make an argument that the team could be back in that national championship spot again and potentially actually win the thing this time. Ranked first in the West out of the West Coast Conference, as well as ranked number 1 on KenPom's rankings overall. Their adjusted offensive ranking on KenPom is number 1, and their adjusted defensive ranking is number 7. This team plays at a very high tempo. Some may even say that they play at the highest tempo in the tournament, as well as in the nation as a whole. Drew Timme, as well as Chet Holmgren, are likely household names at this point, as they were both Wooden Award finalists, which is the award given to the person who is the best player in the nation. Some may hate Timme for his weird mustache celebrations, but at the end of the day, Timme is very clutch, and I think that the Gonzaga Bulldogs are going to be potentially who at the end of today's video we choose to be the winner of 2022 March Madness. So here, a 1 versus a 16 seed. The 16 seeds typically don't stand much of a chance. I understand that there was an upset a couple of years ago with Virginia losing, but a 16-1 upset is mathematically very unlikely coming out of the Sun Belt Conference. The Panthers, who are Georgia State, they won 12 of their final 13 games after a not-so-hot start to the season. They're ranked 151st via KenPom overall rankings and 201st in adjusted offense and 14th in adjusted defense. Their key player of note to note in today's video, so you know a little bit about Georgia State, is going to be senior guard Corey Allen, who is the reason why this team even got into the tournament after winning the Sun Belt tournament up against the Raging Cajuns. With all of those fun facts said, now that you know a little bit about Georgia State, ultimately, they stand 0 chance up against Gonzaga. I'm going to go ahead and pick Gonzaga to move on into the round of 32. Our next matchup here is Boise State versus Memphis. Boise State currently ranks as the 26th team via KenPom rankings overall, with the 76th adjusted offense ranking and 17th in adjusted defense. They rank 307th in tempo, which basically just means that they are as slow as turtles fucking. Overall, Boise State is a very big team, as they only have one player in the rotation shorter than 6'5", named Marcus Shaver Jr., who is the team's leading scorer. One stat that really stood out to me when I was looking at this team as a whole is that they only shoot 65% as a team from the free throw line, the charity stripe. So if they were to make it past this game, they are to beat Memphis, then that is going to be a huge issue later on in the tournament. Teams that can't make fucking free throws struggle mightily later on in the tournament, so they could win this game. That could not be an issue maybe in the first game, but as they get further and further into the tournament, if they were potentially to win this game and beat Gonzaga, it could be a humongous issue. When it comes to Memphis, they currently rank 28th in KenPom rankings overall, with the 50th adjusted offense ranking and 31st adjusted defensive ranking. Memphis ranks 34th in terms of tempo, which is much higher compared to Boise State. Interesting enough, Memphis is not a team with a lot of huge names, as they got a lot of usage out of their rotation as a whole. Their leading scorer on a per game basis is Jalen Duran, who is also their leader in terms of rebounds as well as blocks per game. So he would be technically who, by looking at the stats, would be considered their best player. But again, they do like to utilize a lot of players on a game-to-game basis. You could be seeing maybe 10 plus players utilized, maybe even 12 plus players utilized in this matchup up against Boise State. The biggest question is going to be, which way is the tempo going to end up going? If Boise's able to slow this game down, and again, I said that they play as slow as turtles fucking, it is entirely possible that that ends up happening. This game's a certified snooze fest, and Memphis ends up just getting piped down, right? But if Memphis doesn't allow themselves to get slowed down, then they could easily win this game. To me, this is an 8-9 matchup. This is very close. This is going to be a coin flip. So you can kind of go either way here. Ultimately, though, I am going to side with Memphis as the 9 seed here. I believe that they are going to be able to up that tempo. And I also think that the free throws could ultimately screw Boise State over. So I'm going to lean here with Memphis. Next up, we move to UConn versus New Mexico State. UConn currently ranks 18th via KenPom, 21st in adjusted offense, and 35th in adjusted defense out of the Big East. UConn is known for being excellent at getting offensive rebounds, as well as they bring in just shy of 40% of the offensive boards. Adam Sanago, forward of the Huskies, is their most notable player. Now, if I pronounce any of these players' names wrong, I guess I'm just an asshole. Sometimes I pronounce names wrong, so I apologize, Adam, if you're watching this video and I pronounce your last name wrong. Clearly, I'm an idiot. So he does not lead the team in terms of points per game on a points per game basis, but he is second in that category and gets 8.9 rebounds per game. If New Mexico fails to shoot the lights off, then they are going to struggle immensely against big man Adam Sanago. When it comes to New Mexico State currently ranks 81st via KenPom, 87th in adjusted offense, and 73rd in adjusted defense out of the WAC. They won the WAC after they whacked out, get it, Abilene Christensen, who was a team of note in last year's tournament. If you guys remember, I'm typically one of those guys who loves actually picking the 12-5 upset. I love taking the 12-5 upset. I love taking New Mexico State in the past. They are a team that is pretty interesting, but here I personally feel as though UConn is too powerful and that the Huskies will end up moving on here and evading a 12-5 upset here inside of the West Division. So next up, we move to Arkansas versus Vermont, Arkansas versus Vermont. I know some people call it Arkansas because they don't know how to read. So Arkansas currently ranks 20th in KenPom, 40th in adjusted offense, and 16th in adjusted defense. Their star player, J.D. Nody, plays guard for their team and averages over 18.4 points. He is their clear best player, and it is not even close in my opinion. While that is not meant to demean the likes of Umude, Tony, and Williams, who all average over 10 points on the team, it is to cement to you, the viewer, the person watching, just how good Nody is. With that said, they are not a very big team, in terms of size, and could easily get smacked up if Vermont is shooting lights out from the 3. Vermont currently ranks 59th via KenPom, 44th in adjusted offense, and 74th in adjusted defense, winning 22 of the last 23 games and winning the American East Conference tourney. This is, in my opinion, a very scary team. Vermont fires up threes left and right, Stephen Curry style, and they could easily upset Arkansas in this game. Vermont's leading scorer in points per game is Ryan Davis, who shoots 42.3% from beyond the arc. If you want to take it safe, you want to be safe, then take Arkansas, right? Because on paper, they're definitely a better team. And if you want Vermont to win, you think Vermont is going to win, the way that they win, like I said, is just from chucking up fucking threes, draining these threes in, and hopefully that is able to be enough to outlast Arkansas here, to play better than Arkansas. So if you want to play it safe, go Arkansas. They're a 4 seed. If they end up winning this game, they could easily beat UConn and make their way to the Sweet 16 up against potentially Gonzaga. So if you want to play it safe, go with Arkansas, but there's upsets in the tournament. There's a reason why they call this shit March Madness, because crazy things happen. So I'm going to go with Vermont, and I hope, obviously, with picking them, that they're able to shoot very strong from the 3. Next up, we move to Alabama versus Rutgers/Notre Dame. Alabama was a team that I really liked last year. If you guys watched last year's March Madness video, I was all in favor of Alabama, but ultimately, they made it. It's not like they got smacked out right in the round of 32, like a team we're going to be talking about later. They made it to the Sweet 16 and lost to the tournament darling in UCLA. This is definitely a worse version of the Alabama team, but this year, they are still solid. They ranked 25th in KenPom, 14th in adjusted offense, 94th in adjusted defense, which isn't amazing, but, at least they're in the top 100. Recently, the team has been falling apart kind of in a way, right? They've lost 3 of their last 4 matchups, but they are still a very strong team that has beaten Gonzaga. This is another team like Vermont that just loves shooting threes. They love chucking up the 3 ball, and if they are able to start drilling those threes, then they could just absolutely demolish a team in Rutgers or Notre Dame. For instance, guard Jaden Shackelford, what a great name, who leads the team in points per game with 16.7, shot 18 threes in their loss up against Vanderbilt last week, sinking just 6 of them. So if they're shooting, this motherfucker shoots 18 threes and he makes 5 or 6, then they could lose to Notre Dame or to Rutgers, right? But if he starts sinking them and he's on fire, the team's on fire from shooting these threes, they could potentially knock out a team like Texas Tech, Montana State, and continue to move their way up forward. So as long as these threes are sinking, though, to me, they're going to be able to beat Rutgers or Notre Dame. And even if the threes aren't sinking, I just don't think Notre Dame or Rutgers are really just this team that is going to be a darling in this tournament. Personally, I think that Rutgers is going to end up beating Notre Dame, so that's who we're going to assess in today's video. Again, doesn't really matter too much. If you're betting on this, I do think Notre Dame would beat, I think Rutgers would beat Notre Dame, I should say. So either way, I think Alabama's going to win, but let's give a short breakdown real quick of Rutgers. The team ranked 74th overall in KenPom. I thought that they weren't going to have to play a playing game. I thought they would just make it in. 107th in adjusted offense and 43rd in adjusted defense. Rutgers is led by Ron Harper Jr., son of, you guessed it, Ron Harper Sr., who's a 5-time NBA champion. Harper averages 15.6 points per game and played well in the big dance last season for Rutgers. I won't count them out, but again, anything can happen, so they could win this game, but in my opinion, I think Alabama ultimately wins this one. Next up, we move to one of my favorite teams in the tournament, Texas Tech, the Raiders. Not the Las Vegas Raiders, but the Red Raiders. When you think of an excellent team defensively, the first team you should think of in college basketball should be Texas Tech out of the Big 12, ranking 9th in KenPom overall, 65th offensively, but first in terms of defense. This team is coming off of a loss to Kansas in the Big 12 final, but that should be far from a stain that you want to put on the resume, as Kansas is a 1 seed in this tournament. The team is led in points by forward Bryson Williams, but scoring 100-plus points in a game isn't necessarily needed for the Red Raiders to win. If their strong defense keeps up, then they are going to be a very tough team, in my opinion, to eliminate in the tournament. They are playing up against Montana State, who are out of the Big Sky. They rank 125th in terms of KenPom, 104th in adjusted offense, and 129th in adjusted defense. This team is sneaky good from 3 and is very effective at shooting all over the court. They have 3 starters averaging over double-digit points, with their leading scorer being... And their leading scorer in terms of points per game is guard Xavier Bishop. I do not expect this to be an upset, unless, of course, they just go banana lands from threes. But Texas Tech's defense is just so strong that I don't really see that happening in this round. This West right here, the West region, is very tough, as you guys are going to see as we're going to build out into getting towards the Sweet 16. This is a very tough region. Gonzaga, Duke, and Texas Tech. We will see what's going to be happening to these teams in the future, obviously, as we keep going on. But next up, we move to Michigan State versus Davidson. Everyone and their mother knows about Michigan State, as they are a favorite for a casual fan. I'm not saying that I'm some type of fucking genius over here like Albert Einstein. I'm just saying most people filling out a bracket know about Michigan State. They know about Tom Izzo. I would be surprised, in my opinion, if under 85%, maybe that's a little high, so maybe 80% of people don't just click Michigan State, because everyone knows who Michigan State is, for them to at least win this game up against Davidson. They rank 40th in KenPom overall, 38th in adjusted offense, and 53rd in adjusted defense. This is far from a Michigan State team that we have seen in the past that you would potentially be clamoring for to cut down the net at the end of this tournament. Some will put heavy weight into Tom Izzo's coaching ability, and while that is fair on paper, this team is far from excellent. Their best player offensively is Gabe Brown, who averages 11.4 points per game. Moving to Davidson. Davidson comes into this tourney ranked 41st in KenPom overall, 11th in adjusted offense, and 152nd in adjusted defense. This seems to be a team that I believe could definitely upset Michigan State. And I don't even know if upset would be the correct term here, because people who know about basketball watch, or at least college basketball, I should say, because if you know about basketball, maybe just know about the NBA. If you know about college basketball, you'd realize that this just is not the same Michigan team that you're used to. They have 4 players averaging over 10 points, with their best player in that group being Foster Loyer. Loyer, Loyer. If I pronounce his name wrong again, I apologize. The team just lost to Richmond in the Atlanta 10 championship, but it was only by 2 points, I think, in this game. I personally think that in a game that Ken Pom views as so close, and in a game where so many people take Michigan State, I'll just go in the opposite direction and go with Davidson. I think both of these teams could get absolutely butt fucked by Duke, so I don't think you necessarily need to put too much weight into this, right? Because ultimately, I think Duke would end up beating them. So here we're going to go with Davidson. If you guys have ended up enjoying thus far, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button as well as hitting that like button. And if you guys would like a different view on this, I work at awesomemode.com. We have a video coming out very shortly with Ben Rasa as well as Matt Gajewski talking about the tournament as well. So if you want a different look, you don't necessarily like what I'm talking about, maybe you'll enjoy them. I'll leave a link to the channel down below in the description. And I will ultimately change it to be the video whenever the video is posted. So we got Duke versus CSU Fullerton. Duke. The first talking point about Duke, we all got to talk about it, is that this is Coach K's last season, making everything about him on the last ride, taking his team to be a 2 seed in the Big Dance. It seemed like the whole world was watching when UNC laid the pipe to that ass like they were a plumber in his final home game. They shook that off, got all the way to the ACC tournament finals, but then they lose there to Virginia Tech. This team comes in the tournament 12th via Ken Pom, which is the lowest of the 2 seeds, 7th in adjusted offense, 44th in adjusted defense. They certainly have the talent with players like Paolo Banchero as well as Wendell Moore Jr., but the question is, will they be able to get over that hump? And I'm not talking about the hump versus CSU Fullerton, right? That's not what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about getting past potentially Texas Tech. If you get past Texas Tech, can you potentially beat a team like Gonzaga? And if you get into the Final Four, could you beat another great team? I'm just not sure that they have it in them. Coach K doesn't look like the same Coach K from the past. I don't know if I'm fucking crazy or something, but when I'm watching these games for Duke, it just doesn't look the same. CSU Fullerton, while it would bring me pure joy to see Duke get dunked on by CSU Fullerton, the 15 seeds are 9-135 in tournament history, so it's definitely possible that they can win, right? Anything is possible. The Big West champions get an awful draw because they got to play Duke. They currently rank 149th on Ken Pom, ranking 144th in adjusted offense and 164th in adjusted defense. The funniest stat that I found while researching this team is that they have actually had more turnovers. I should say you read that wrong. Read wrong. I read on the screen wrong. I apologize. So they have had more turnovers than assists on the season. More turnovers than assists. Duke is going to take them out back, take them to go look at the rabbits, and shoot them back in the back of the head, Lenny style. So now we move on to the round of 32. We're just going to fill out all of the West, and then we are going to go to the South. Obviously, I'm just going to move myself to the other side of the bracket. So next up, we get Gonzaga versus Memphis. To me, this isn't really even going to be much of a contest. Maybe Memphis is able to get it close. Again, this could easily be Boise State versus Gonzaga. Again, that was one of those games that we talked about as being kind of 50-50. I'm going to lean with Gonzaga. Then we got UConn versus Vermont. This is also another one where, again, if Vermont is legit, if they actually were able to get past Arkansas, then if they're able to shoot these threes with ferocity, with anger, drilling threes, then they could easily get past UConn, right? But if they're not able to do that, then UConn will be able to win this game. Again, I'm going to continue to hinge on Vermont actually shooting well from 3. I think they're one of the more interesting teams in the tournament. I don't think they're going to end up beating Gonzaga, right, in a couple minutes when we talk about that, but I think they could beat UConn. I also think if Arkansas gets here, they could easily beat UConn as well. Then we move down to Alabama versus Texas Tech. I did state before that I am a huge fan of Texas Tech. Again, I'll read it off again. 9th in Ken Pom, 65th offensively, but they are the best defensive team in the tournament. They are the best team in the nation. I'm the best in the nation. They are, in terms of defense. Again, they lost to Kansas, but Alabama is no fucking Kansas, so here I'm going to go ahead and pick Texas Tech. And then Davidson versus Duke. It was fun. We got Davidson to beat Michigan State, which I definitely think could happen. But while I want Duke to lose, again, I'm not necessarily a Duke hater because I picked Duke to win before in the tournament, but I don't want to see Duke win on Coach K's last ride. He has made this so much about himself. Instead of just retiring at the end of the season, he's just going with it like this. I don't like it. I want Duke to lose here. They're going to win, though. So then we got Gonzaga versus Vermont. Even if Vermont gets this far, right, they got past UConn. They got past Arkansas. There's just no way that Gonzaga loses this game, in my opinion. I think Gonzaga is going to potentially make it to the Final Four here, as they've made it to the Elite Eight. So I don't think there's too much to really break down about that. Gonzaga is just a far better team when compared to Vermont. And then you got Texas Tech versus Duke. Coach K's potential final game. The Red Raiders, super good on defense. Not amazing offensively, again, 65th offensively. Duke, let me see here. Duke is ranked 7th offensively. So obviously they have the better offense, but Texas Tech has the better defense. Will Coach K be able to rally his team to beat Texas Tech here? In my opinion, no. So I think Texas Tech is going to go ahead and make it there. And then we're actually just going to save the Elite Eight for later on in the video. So Gonzaga versus Texas Tech get to the Elite Eight out of the West. Now, I'm going to have to go ahead and do the electric slide, and then we're going to move over to the South part of the bracket. So beginning in the South, we have the 1 seed. We have Arizona versus Wright State / Bryant. Let me just give a quick breakdown of Wright State versus Bryant. I personally think that Bryant is going to be able to take care of Wright State. Peter Kiss will put the team on his back. Marshawn Lynch style, put the team on my back. Darren Sharper, hold my dick type of deal here. He's the leading scorer in the nation. He's clearly a good player. But once you get past Wright State, then you have to face up against Arizona. And man, oh man, you don't want to be doing that. So pretty bad draw, obviously, for Bryant if you are a fan of Bryant. Arizona, you can definitely make the argument that Arizona is just the best team here in the whole tournament, which makes sense. Why does that make sense, Nick, you might ask? Because they're a number 1 seed, ranking 2nd on KenPom overall, 5th in adjusted offense, 20th in adjusted defense. The biggest question mark when it comes to the team is the health of their point guard, Kerr Kriisa. They have a lot of players from other countries, a lot of players with hard names to pronounce. Just so you know. The early report that I'm seeing is that his ankle sprain diagnosis is very optimistic, and they believe he's going to be able to play in the first week of the tournament. Does that mean that he's going to play up against Bryant or Wright State? No, he'll probably play in the second game of the weekend, because why would they potentially waste him potentially getting hurt or something like that on a game like this, right? There's just no reason to do that. That likely means that he'll be taking the seat here in the first game. But that's just fine, as they were able to have a comeback win up against UCLA without him. This team is led in points per game by Benedict Mathurin. And while the team is not necessarily excellent from 3, they're not just draining fucking threes, they'll be just fine. Their head coach, Tommy Lloyd, was actually an assistant coach for 22 years at Gonzaga. So this is his first year as head coach of the team. They're in the tournament. They're a number 1 seed. Question is, will that catch up to him? Will the fact that this is his first year as the head coach, I understand, Nick, he's been at Gonzaga, right? He's going to be just fine. Will that catch up to him? Maybe, maybe not. That's definitely a discussion to have later. Not going to catch up to him here up against Arizona or up against Wright State or Bryant, as they just shellac them. Next up, we move to the 8-9 matchup of TCU versus Seton Hall. This game, to me, complete coin flip. Seton Hall ranks 35th via KenPom, 75th in adjusted offense, 26th in adjusted defense. Seton Hall has 2 main players, as they are the only ones on the team averaging over 10 points, that being Roden averaging 15.9 points, and Aiken averaging over 14.5 points per game. TCU ranks 38th in KenPom, 80th in defense, 80th in offense, I should say, 24th in defense. Their best player averages 15 points per game, and he's a guard named Miles. Again, I really believe that this game is going to be a coin flip. And whoever wins this game is going to get penetrated by Arizona. So, coin flip, pick it either way here. I'll go with TCU. I'll go with the 9 upset over the 8. Both of these teams are fine, but neither of these teams are beating Arizona. Next up, we move to Houston versus UAB. Houston made their Final Four last season, and they're having 4 of their starters return from that Final Four push, which is great and all, ranking 4th in KenPom, ranking 10th in adjusted offense. So they're 4th overall in KenPom, 11th in adjusted defense, but they're a 5 seed. They have 6 players averaging 10 points per game, only 5 if Sasser does not end up playing. Who's their star player? Realistically should be out for the tournament, but there is some hope that maybe he comes back. Again, I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, so I don't fucking know. I don't think he's going to come back, but there is some hope that he comes back. If not, they got to rely on Kyler Edwards, who averages 13.6 points per game and 6 rebounds. Hopefully this Kyler, not as much of a choke artist as Kyler Murray, because then Houston might just lose to UAB, if that's the case. A big issue with Houston is that they are down tremendous, down astronomical from the charity stripe, which typically is really bad. If you want to make a big tournament run, UAB ranks 46th in KenPom, 28th in adjusted offense, and 89th in adjusted defense. They have a really cool dragon logo. They won the CUSA title. UAB is a smaller team as their focus is on guard play, and even with the injury to Sasser, I still expect Houston to win here, so nothing too deep here. Next up, we move to a team that absolutely bent you over a fucking table last year if you ended up picking them. Illinois versus Chattanooga. Illinois ranked 17th in KenPom, 23rd in adjusted offense, and 30th in adjusted defense. They were a 1 seed last year and got knocked out in the second round, the round of 32. They are back for blood, back for vengeance, and as a 4 seed, they could have a nice solid run here, potentially. Their star player, Kofi Coburn. His name looks like Kofi Cockburn, but that's not how you say it. Funny jersey to get, though. I want to get that jersey. Who has the best name in all college basketball and is a finalist in the Wooden Award and averaged 21.1 points per game and 10.6 rebounds per game. He is not the only player of note, though. They also have another player to note, actually 2 other players to note. So we got Alfonso Plummer, who averaged 14.8 points per game, and Terry Frazier, who averaged 12.1 points per game. This could be a very dangerous team, so interesting to talk about him. A lot of people are talking about Chattanooga. I've seen a lot of buzz about that. They ranked 72nd. Sorry, I apologize. Via KenPom, 58th in adjusted offense and 85th in adjusted defense. They won the Southern Conference and have an excellent guard in Malachi Smith, who averages 20.1 points per game and 6.7 rebounds. Problem here is that, Chattanooga sounds kind of fun, right? But I don't think fucking Illinois is going to lose this game, right? Maybe if they played up against Michigan or something, or Colorado State, then boom, I take Chattanooga. But here, I like Illinois. Next up, we move to Colorado State versus Michigan. Colorado State ranks 31st in KenPom, 20th in adjusted offense, and 83rd in adjusted defense, led by guard David Rhodey, who averages 19.4 points and 7.6 rebounds per game. They also have Isaiah Stevens, who averages 14.9 points per game and 3.1 rebounds. Realistically, they should beat Michigan because there's no fucking reason why Michigan should be here. Michigan looks atrocious. Michigan ranks 33rd in KenPom, 19th in adjusted offense, 218th in adjusted defense. This team just kept racking up losses. They lose to Indiana in their most recent game, even though they kept losing. And Juwan Howard maybe lost the locker room or something. It looks bad there. Something just tells me that they're going to somehow win this game. They're led by Hunter Dickinson in their point total with 18.3 per game and 8.3 rebounds per game. They have 4 other players as well on the team that average over 10 points per game. If Dickinson is able to, take over in this game, I think they could win. And I'm going to take them to win, because I think everyone just thinks Michigan's going to lose. They're all going to take Colorado State. So I'm zigging. While they're on the straight line, I'm zigzagging. I'm taking Michigan. I think Michigan could win this game. I don't think they're making it very far, but I think they can win this game. Next up, we move to Tennessee versus Longwood. Last year, we got Oral Roberts, Oral Bob. This year, we get Longwood. How exciting. Tennessee comes into the tournament ranked 7th via KenPom, 36th in adjusted offense, and 3rd in adjusted defense. They have 2 key players to watch for in this tournament. Kennedy Chandler, who averages 13.8 points per game, and Santiago Vescovi, who averages 13.4 points per game. They are great at forcing turnovers as well as shooting the 3-ball. They do have quite a deep team, as they do look to use other players not named Chandler or Vescovi, but those are the key pieces. They make the wheels go round and round, so that's why I made them noted in the video. Longwood, they rank 144th in KenPom, 115th in adjusted offense, 191st in adjusted defense. They've won 19 of the last 20 games. First ever tournament. Congratulations, they made it to the big dance. But they're not going to be dancing for too long, because their ass is getting the Longwood put inside of them by Tennessee. Because they're the only 10s that I see. Tennessee defeats Longwood. Next up, we move to the Ohio State University versus Loyola Chicago and Sister Jean. Ohio State ranks 32nd in terms of KenPom, 13th in terms of adjusted offense, and 131st in adjusted defense. This team has been quite streaky this season, Ohio State that is, and they are 1-4 in the last 5 games. Not great. Typically, you look for teams that are on fire going into the tournament, not teams that are skidding off, right, on a bad path. You want them on the good path. They have beaten solid teams like Duke. They've beat Wisconsin. But can they find that spark? Can they beat Loyola Chicago? They're led by E.J. Lindell, who averages 19.6 points per game and 7.9 rebounds per game. They're in a solid position to potentially beat this team because I think they're better than Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago ranks 24th in KenPom, 42nd in adjusted offense, and 22nd in terms of adjusted defense. They've got a different coach from their last runs. This team is led by Lucas Williamson, who averages 14 points per game and 5 rebounds. If their defense is able to stop the Ohio State, then they could easily win. But again, this isn't the same Loyola Chicago of the past that was dancing with Sister Jean. This ain't it. So I'm going to go ahead and fade Loyola Chicago. When everyone's going on Loyola Chicago, we say, fuck Loyola Chicago. Ohio State. Let's go, baby. Next up, we move to Villanova versus Delaware. Villanova ranks 11th via KenPom, 8th in adjusted offense, and 28th in adjusted defense. They shoot a lot of threes and play great defense. The threes come raining in from Colin Giuseppe, who shoots 42.2% from behind the arc. And Justin Moore shoots 42.2% for three. Both of these players, both Giuseppe, both Moore, average over 15 points per game. Something huge to note about Nova is that they are great from the charity stripe. They're great from the free throw line, which is amazing to have if you want to make this crazy run in the tournament. Delaware ranks 145th in KenPom, 100th in adjusted offense, 212th in adjusted defense. Another scenario where, for the purpose of not making this video 2 fucking hours long, we are going to go ahead and just breeze past Delaware. Their best player is Jameer Nelson, 13.7 points per game. They have 4 players who average over 10 points per game. Maybe if they played someone else, they'd be able to win. But against Villanova by 50. Next up, we move back to the round of 32. Arizona versus TCU. Again, I think Seton Hall could easily be here. They're going up against Arizona. Either team is going to get buzzsawed out here. Arizona is legit. Arizona's legit one of the best teams in the country. Again, the new coach could definitely take this team down, right? Because maybe he gets nervous. Maybe he starts shitting himself during this tournament, right? Tommy Lloyd might get a little bit nervous. But I really do think that if he is to get nervous, it might be in the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, the Final Four, right? That's when he starts to get nervous. Not here against TCU, right? So even if he shits himself, they have to take him out of the game. They're still going to beat TCU, so not too worried about that. Next up, we move to Houston versus Illinois. Houston, like I said, they made the Final Four last year. They rank 4th in KenPom, which is surprising considering they're a 5th seed. Illinois ranks 17th in KenPom. They got knocked out last year in this exact round. Will it be a repeat of last year, or will they be able to get over the hump and go up against Arizona? In my opinion, I think that Illinois ends up winning this game. I understand Houston might be a little bit more battle-tested, battle-ready, right? They did it last year. They had 4 of 5 return. This really does seem 50-50. Again, Illinois back for blood. Houston was there last year. I'm going to switch my pick. I said Illinois originally. I'm going to go with Houston here. Houston, as some people say. Next up, we got Michigan versus Tennessee. Michigan should not be in the tournament. I don't even know if they will be able to actually beat Colorado State. But Colorado State isn't amazing either. So I think even if it is Colorado State or Michigan up against Tennessee, I'm not the biggest fan of Tennessee. Again, they have 2 key players on their team that we've talked about. They're a pretty solid team. They're great at getting turnovers. They're good at shooting threes. They don't necessarily scream, oh, Nick, this is a team that's going to make the Elite 8 or anything, but they're going to beat Michigan. And then we got Ohio State versus Villanova. Again, Ohio State, they beat Loyola Chicago. Nice, you beat up Sister Jean, but I think the road ends there for them. I think Villanova is one of the better teams in this tournament. Obviously, they're ranked as a 2 seed, but even as a 2 seed, I think that a lot of people would be surprised if they won the whole thing, and I think they could easily win the whole thing. Again, 11th in KenPom, 8th in adjusted offense, 28th in adjusted defense. I like Villanova here to beat Tennessee when they face Tennessee. And then Arizona, Houston. Houston, again, they made the Final Four, but I think that ultimately stops with Arizona. And now we're here in the Elite 8. We've got Gonzaga, Texas Tech in the West, and then the South, Arizona versus Villanova. Now we got to go ahead and pan down to the bottom right. So we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom right and go with the Midwest, beginning with Kansas versus Texas A&M or Texas Southern, Texas A&M CC. Not Texas A&M like with Johnny Football. Different Texas A&M. Kansas ranks 6th in KenPom as the lowest 1 seed, ranking 6th in adjusted offense and 29th in adjusted defense, led by guard Ochai Ogbajai. Ogbaji, again, if I pronounce your name, I'm sorry, who averages 19.6 points and 5.1 rebounds per game, who also shoots 40.5% from the three. Guard Christian Braun, 14.6 points per game and 6.4 rebounds per game, shooting 37.7% from the three. They also have two other good players, I'm not going to name here, but they're still good, who are averaging over 10 points per game. Now we're at the point in the video where we're 40 fucking minutes in, somewhere near there. We're not going to break down Texas A&M or Texas Southern, who gives a fuck. Kansas by 50. San Diego State versus Creighton. San Diego State ranks 22nd in KenPom, ranking 157th in adjusted offense and 2nd in adjusted defense, making this team hard to watch, as if the defense isn't A1 like the steak sauce, they can't win. They have one good offensive player, and that is guard Matt Bradley, who averages 17 points per game and shoots 41.6% from the three. If he can take over, they could probably schmack up Creighton here. If he doesn't, then that's a big yikes. Creighton ranks 53rd overall in KenPom, ranking 124th in terms of adjusted offense and 18th in terms of adjusted defense. These are two teams that clearly aren't great offensively, but are obviously great defensively. Creighton is quite deep, as they have 4 players averaging over 10 points and 2 players averaging over 7 rebounds. They are a much younger team, which could be their demise, but ultimately I will lean on Creighton, as I think their defense might be able to just hone fully in on, be like, fuck it, anyone else can score, but Matt Bradley's not going to score. And then they just cakewalk their way there. So I think Creighton wins that game. Next up, we move to Iowa versus Richmond. I think this is going to be one of the favorite upset picks. Iowa's ranked 13th in KenPom, ranking 2nd in adjusted offense and 77th in adjusted defense. They're currently running hot after winning the Big Ten tournament and have one of the best players in the tournament in Keegan Murray, who is averaging 23.6 points per game, 8.6 rebounds per game. People seem to be low on Iowa despite their KenPom ranking being pretty high. And they're also one of the most effective teams offensively. They have a great player in Murray, but I still think a lot of people are going to pick the Spiders. Richmond, the Spiders, rank 83rd in KenPom, ranking 68th in offense. One off of being very nice, I like, with 69, but they're 68th. It's okay. On offense, and 104th on defense. They narrowly beat Davidson in the Atlantic 10 tournament finals to get their trip on here into the big dance. They have 3 players averaging over 13 points and are led by forward Tyler Burton, who averages 16.3 points and 7.7 rebounds per game. Since everyone seems to be super hot on Iowa, getting soaked here by Richmond, I'm going with Iowa. Next up, we move to Providence versus South Dakota State. The Rabbits, I believe they are called. Home of my main man, Carson Wentz. Just kidding. I hate Carson Wentz. I'm just kidding. Carson went to North Dakota State. I'm a fucking idiot. You idiot. He went to the Bisons, not the Rabbits, the Jackrabbits. So Providence ranks 49th in KenPom overall, 31st in adjusted offense, and 79th in adjusted defense. This offense runs through center Nate Watson. Watson averages 13.8 points per game and 5.4 rebounds per game. They have an adjusted tempo of 273. Ranking 273rd, not good. So they want to slow down the pace, want to keep it nice and slow. Get inside, pass the ball inside to Watson. Have him lay it in, slam it in. South Dakota State ranks 71st in KenPom, 12th on adjusted offense, 220th on adjusted defense. They're on a 21 win streak. They shoot a ton of threes and are undefeated when up at halftime. They have 2 players who average over 16 points per game in Wilson and Shireman. Teams that play at the 59th ranked adjusted tempo, and the team plays at the 59th ranked adjusted tempo, and I think if they are able to keep the tempo up, they could definitely beat Providence. The only worry here is that Providence have won 11 of their 13 games that were decided by 5 or less points, so it's definitely a worry, right, if this game is close, that Providence is able to ultimately eke them out here, but I think that South Dakota State is going to defeat Providence here. Next up, we move to LSU versus Iowa State. LSU ranks 19th in KenPom, ranking 89th in adjusted offense and 5th in adjusted defense. They have one of the highest turnover rates in all of the tournament. If they are not able to get in close to the rim, then LSU does struggle mightily. They heavily hinge on the defense, and if the defense does not show up here, they will certainly lose, barring a miracle of excellent offensive play. They are led by forward Eason, who averages 16.9 points per game and 6.7 rebounds per game. They also have another forward who actually gets more minutes than Eason, named Days, who averages 13.7 points and 7.7 rebounds per game. Moving to Iowa State. Iowa State currently ranks 48th in KenPom, ranking 151st in adjusted offense and 10th in adjusted defense. With this game projected to be so close, Iowa State is very likely to become one of those teams that a lot of people are going to end up picking to upset. They're led by Isaiah Brockington, who ranks 17, or who averages, I should say, 17.2 points per game and 7.1 rebounds. Overall, this will be a very close game and could go either way, but I don't expect either of them to end up beating Wisconsin. So again, it's kind of like a coin flip here. I'm going to go with LSU. I think a lot of people are going to end up taking Iowa State. Next up, we move to Wisconsin versus Colgate. I kind of just spoiled my thinking, but Wisconsin's going to take out the toothpaste boys here. Wisconsin ranks 34th in KenPom, ranking 49th in adjusted offense and 38th in adjusted defense. After it seemed like the whole fucking universe aligned to be on Wisconsin after winning 5 straight in February, as well as defeating Purdue in March, they win 2 straight to Nebraska and Michigan State. While this does not seem ideal, I think they'll be just fine. This team is led by Big Ten Player of the Year Johnny Davis, who averages 19.7 points per game and 8.2 rebounds per game. They also have Brad Davison, who averages 14.5 points and 4.1 rebounds per game. If they can figure things out, Wisconsin could be a sneaky team in this tournament. They're definitely going to figure it out against Colgate, though. I really don't think Colgate stands a chance. Again, they rank 119th on KenPom, 79th in adjusted offense, 203rd in adjusted defense. They make toothpaste. Badgers by 50, baby. I really don't think Colgate stands too much of a chance here, so we're not going to really dive too deeply into that. Next up, we move to USC versus Miami. USC ranks 42nd in KenPom overall, ranking 47th in adjusted defense and 49th in, or adjusted offense, I should say, and 49th in adjusted defense. So 47th in offense, 49th in defense. Their team is pretty big, as 4 of their starters are over 6'9", which helps them be, you guessed it, good at rebounding, good at dunking, things like that. They run a slow-paced offense led by Isaiah Mobley, who averages 14.3 points and 8.5 rebounds per game. Miami, the Canes rank 67th or 62nd overall on KenPom, ranking 17th offensively and 106th in adjusted defense. They are led by guards McGusty and Wong, who average 17.6 and 15.2 points. The biggest worry here is that they stink at rebounding, and USC is very good at rebounding. So this is another game that I see as very close, and since USC is good at rebounding and Miami isn't, I am going to lean with USC. I personally hope Miami wins this game, as I am a fan of the U. They're my favorite college team, so personally I want the U to win, but I think USC is ultimately going to end up winning this game. Next up, we move to Auburn versus Jacksonville State. Auburn ranks 10th in KenPom, ranking 24th in adjusted offense and 8th in adjusted defense. They somehow lost in the SEC tournament in the first round to Texas A&M. They have a future NBA lottery pick on their team in Jabari Smith, who is a guard who is averaging 17.1 points per game and 7 rebounds. He is their clear star player on the team. They are very sound offensively and defensively. Despite them being so young, I think they can make a very solid run at the tournament. I just hope that nothing stupid happens and they end up losing some stupid game like next up against LSU or Miami. Jacksonville State, they rank 146th in KenPom, 132nd in adjusted offense, 178th in adjusted defense. Again, to make the video shorter, not going to dive super deep on them. So I got Auburn. So here, we're going to go ahead and go with Kansas over Creighton. Again, I think Creighton's a fine team. If they went up against San Diego State, I would definitely hammer in on Kansas, right? Kansas would demolish San Diego State, but I'm going to go with Kansas here. And then Iowa versus South Dakota State. I think we could easily see South Dakota win this game if they're able to shoot these crazy threes. And I think a lot of people are going to be on that. As you can see up here, we had a 5-4, 11-3, 7-2, 1-9, 1-9, 5-13, 6-3, 10-2. So here we are going to go ahead and go with yet another upset here. And I want to go with South Dakota State because I don't really think Iowa or Richmond would be able to beat San Diego State, or South Dakota State, I should say. Next up, we move to LSU versus Wisconsin. Here, I definitely like Wisconsin. Again, they were slow. They're getting into the tournament slow. They weren't slow all season, right? They were a good team all season, but they started to slow down. Again, Johnny Davis is fucking great. LSU isn't that great. LSU could lose to Iowa State, so I think Wisconsin could win here. And then USC versus Auburn. I'm switching my pick. I know I initially went with USC, but I'm a fan of Miami. I want Miami to win. USC is so slow. They're just so slow. I think Miami could beat them, so I'm switching my pick there again. If you're like, Nick, don't fucking switch your pick. Stay with USC. Go ahead and stay with USC. But I think Miami could win that game. USC can win that game again. It's pretty close. Anyone could win any game. I've made that pretty clear, but I think Miami's going to win. And then Miami versus Auburn. Auburn is really one of those teams that I think they're either going to barrel their way straight into the Final Four, maybe win the whole fucking thing, or get stopped by Wisconsin. I like Auburn here, though. Auburn, again, they are also one of those teams that, they lost that stupid game. How the fuck do you lose to Texas A&M? But they're really good. They are really good. And again, Jabari Smith is super good. I think Auburn wins that game. Kansas, South Dakota State. I don't think South Dakota State would be able to beat Kansas. And then we're going to go with Auburn over Wisconsin. And then that's where we're going to sit here. So we're going to slide ourselves over do the electric slide over here, and then we're going to move to the East, and then we're going to get all the way from the Elite Eight to the Final Four to see who is going to be cutting down the net at the end of the tournament. So again, if you guys have ended up enjoying this far, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. I would appreciate it greatly. So we move to the East, beginning with Baylor versus Norfolk State. Baylor won the whole shebang last year. They won the whole thing. Congratulations. After defeating Gonzaga, they currently rank 5th via KenPom, 9th in overall adjusted offense, 19th in adjusted defense. Many people are counting out Baylor, talking about how it's improbable that a teams win the title and then they repeat, right? That seems very unlikely. Or that they even make it back to the Final Four, especially since they're not the same team they were last season. They lost to Oklahoma in the Big 12 tournament that Kansas ultimately won. This is a good team. They're not a pushover. So I think there'd be Norfolk State, but I don't think that they're going to make this hoorah run like they made last year. Norfolk State, again, when it comes to 16-1 upsets, it's basically impossible. The 16 seed is 1-143 in all time. 1-143, and there have only been 15 games that have been decided by 10 points or less. Norfolk State won the Mid-Eastern Atlantic Conference, which is cool and all. It's great, but Baylor is going to win that game. Next up, we move to UNC versus Marquette. UNC enters the tournament ranked 29th via KenPom, 27th on adjusted offense, and 64th on adjusted defense. They absolutely manhandled Coach K and Duke 94-81 in his final game, coached at Duke. Normally, not technically coached at Duke, the school, but at the stadium, at home at Duke. Normally, we're used to UNC being a pretty high seed in the tournament, but that doesn't mean that they're bad, right? Maybe not amazing, but they're not bad. They have 4 players averaging over 10 points, and their star player, Armando Bacot, averages 16.5 points and 12.5 rebounds. I think here up against Marquette, this should be a win. Marquette ranks 47th in KenPom, 62nd in terms of adjusted offense, and 46th in terms of adjusted defense. Their biggest way to win here is playing at a very high pace. They're ranked 26th in adjusted pace, adjusted tempo, to UNC's 38th. They have one standalone stud player who could ultimately take over, and that is freshman forward Justin Lewis, averaging 17.1 points and 7.9 rebounds per game. Even with that said, I still think that UNC is able to pull this one out. Next up, we move to St. Mary's versus Indiana/Wyoming. I'm going to go ahead and assume that Indiana wins this game. So Indiana was certainly good enough, in my opinion, to just get into this tournament without a playing game. They rank 36th in KenPom, 91st in adjusted offense, 21st in adjusted defense. Seems like stylistically, this could be a tough matchup up against St. Mary's because they have such a strong defense, led by Tyrese Jackson Davis, who averages 18.1 points per game and 8.2 rebounds per game. This should not be a cakewalk for the Gales, St. Mary's. St. Mary's ranks 16th on KenPom, 63rd in adjusted offense, but they're great defensively, top 10, ranked 9th in defense. Coming out of the West Coast Conference, a very noteworthy stat is their only losses are when their opponent holds them to below 40% from the field, which is bad news bears up against other good defensive teams like themselves. They don't really have one key star power, right? They're not one of these teams with that guy. Boom, you throw him on the fucking... You put him on the cover of the... What are those called? When you go to the game, the magazine, I don't know what it's called. You know what I'm talking... The brochure, whatever you want to call it. They put him on that. They put him on the billboards. Nah, they don't got that guy. If there was to be a star, it would technically be Matthias Tass. But, that's just to name a guy. That's not necessarily their star player. This is not a bad thing, though, as they could run quite deep in the tournament, and they have beaten Gonzaga before. Though, at the end of the day, even with that said about Indiana, if I think they make it here, St. Mary's ultimately going to win. I think they eat a W, famous Jameis style. Next up, we move to UCLA versus Akron. UCLA made the Final Four last season and returned many of their starters from last season, ranking 8th overall in KenPom, 15th in adjusted offense, and 12th in adjusted defense. Their most important players who returned being Johnny Uzang, who averages 16 points per game, and Jamie Jacquez, Jackass, that's probably what it sounded like, Jacquez, who averages 14 points per game with experience of making it far. They should be a tough out this March. To me, Akron really stands no chance. Now that I said they have no chance, they're probably going to end up winning, right? Because that's just what fucking happens. That was what happened with Oral Roberts last year. I said, oh, their name's Oral Roberts. Ha fucking Oral Roberts. Get it? Blowjob. Ha and then they fucking win. Akron ranks 131st in KenPom, 113th in adjusted offense, and 166th in adjusted defense. The soft-ass NCAA suspended 4 players on Kent State, who they played against, to advance into the tournament because they made a video making fun of Akron. And then Akron shouldn't even be here, but they make it. Fuck Akron because of that. UCLA by 50. Next up, we move to Texas versus VT. Texas ranks 15th in KenPom, 32nd in adjusted offense, and 13th in adjusted defense. Despite being so strong, they lost to TCU in the Big 12 tournament and are on a 3-game losing streak. Maybe they get that spark, they regain that spark, and they make a deep run in the tournament after beating Virginia Tech. They have 3 players averaging over 10 points, and their strongest player offensively is Timmy Allen, who averages 12.3 points per game and 6.5 assists. But I'm not too sure I trust a grown man whose name is Timmy. Why not go by Tim, pal? You're not 12. Virginia Tech ranks 23rd in KenPom, 18th in adjusted offense, and 55th in adjusted defense. VT is coming in hot after beating Duke to win the ACC tournament. They are one of those teams that are likely to drip down the clock, which could heavily help them win in the tournament, led by forward Kevin Aluma, who averages 15.8 points per game and 6.5 rebounds per game. They have 3 players averaging over 10 points. I typically like teams that are coming into the tournament scorching hot. And I truly believe that this game is kind of another one where it's really 50-50. I'm going to lean VT here. I'm going to lean Virginia Tech. They're on fire, and Texas is not on fire. So we're just going to go with the fire. Going to go with the heat and go with Virginia Tech. Next up, we move to Purdue. I just read Purdue and Yale together. Purdue versus Yale. Purdue, despite looking like the clear best team in the Big Ten, Iowa ultimately defeated them in the championship game. They rank 14th in KenPom, 3rd in adjusted offense, and 100th in adjusted defense. Against teams like Yale, the defense being kind of dog shit doesn't really matter. But later on in the tournament, that's going to matter. Their defense has one of the lowest forced turnover rates in the NCAA. They're led by guard Jaden Ivey, who averages 17.4 points, as well as having Edie and Williams, who average over 10 points and over 7 rebounds per game. Let's hope that their shooting numbers are strong, because otherwise things could get very ugly for Purdue. Yale. These smart motherfuckers over at Yale, they're dancing. The dance ain't going to be very long, though. They rank 147th in KenPom, 203rd, in adjusted offense, 103rd in adjusted defense. Though they do have a bright spot in Azar Swain, who leads the team in points. Sadly for them, Purdue's going to win by a million. Next up, we move to Murray State versus San Francisco. A scorching hot pick is going to be San Francisco. Everyone and their mother appears to be taking San Francisco based upon what I've seen. So Murray State ranks 27th in KenPom, 35th in adjusted offense, and 40th in adjusted defense. They are currently on a 20-game win streak, led by forward KJ Williams and guard Tevin Brown. Williams averages 18.2 points per game and 8.6 rebounds. Brown averages 16.9 points per game and 5.5 rebounds. They are in a very interesting spot here, as it appears that San Francisco is going to be a very big upset pick, kind of like I hammered in on. San Francisco ranks 21st in KenPom, 45th in adjusted offense, and 19th in adjusted defense, which is why you can see that this is a favorite upset pick coming out of the WCC. They play great defense against the 3-ball. They also have 2 stud players in Bouye and Shabazz, who average 16.7 and 14 points per game. They also have Masalski, who averages 13.5 points and 9.4 rebounds. I will lean with the public this time, and we're going to take San Fran here. And I think either of these teams might be able to beat Kentucky. Again, Kentucky's going to beat St. Peter's. We'll get into that real quick. Oh, I clicked the wrong button. San Francisco. So Kentucky versus St. Peter's. Kentucky ranks 3rd in KenPom, 4th in adjusted offense, and 27th in adjusted defense, led by forward Oscar Tshiebwe, Tshiebwe. Again, if I pronounce these guys' names wrong, I apologize. So Oscar T, who averages 17 points and 15.1 rebounds per game. My biggest worry when it comes to Kentucky is that recently, this hasn't been the same Kentucky of the past that you remember, being eliminated in the second round, the Elite Eight, the Sweet 16, and Elite Eight in their last 4 times in the tournament. Now, should this mean that they're going to lose to St. Peter's? No, but I don't think they're a lock necessarily to make it to the Final Four. St. Peter's ranks 118th in KenPom, 259th in adjusted offense, and 34th in adjusted defense, while I may not have the strongest belief in Kentucky. I can't feasibly see St. Peter's winning here. Sure, they won the MAC, and sure, they have a solid player in Casey Nadifo, but this is going to be a loss. So we're going to go ahead and go with Kentucky. So back up here, Baylor, UNC. This East division is very interesting. Again, I talked about how the West, to me, looks like the hardest. This division seems pretty open here. Not division, the region, I should say, seems pretty open. I could see UNC beating Baylor. I talked about how I didn't really like Baylor. I made that pretty clear. Again, they are ranked 5th overall in KenPom. So they could definitely, they're not some shit team, right? I'm not saying that. I'm not going to go here and tell you, oh, Baylor sucks, right? Because they don't. North Carolina's 29th in KenPom. So I think North Carolina could win this game, but I'm going to give Baylor one more win. I think they squeak past UNC. Then we got St. Mary's versus UCLA. St. Mary's, very strong defensively. UCLA made that strong run. Pretty strong defensively as well. These are 2 great teams. Technically, KenPom heavily would favor UCLA. UCLA is ranked 8th in KenPom. St. Mary's is ranked 16th. This is going to be a pretty close game. If St. Mary's defense really does go all out, though, and locks down here, that could be great for St. Mary's, but I think ultimately UCLA is going to be able to beat St. Mary's, so we're going to go with UCLA here. And we are going to find UCLA back in the Elite Eight. Next up, we move to Virginia Tech versus Purdue. I was pretty high on Virginia Tech. Like we talked about, they're on a roll. Purdue, they're also one of those teams very streaky. I think if Purdue is on point, Purdue will beat Virginia Tech. And then Kentucky, San Francisco. I like San Francisco, all fun and all, but I think I would like Kentucky here. And then we are going to go with Baylor, UCLA. I think ultimately Baylor is going to lose. Now, the problem is I think St. Mary's defense would play very strong against them, so I think St. Mary's could also beat Baylor. I don't really think Baylor is going to make that deep of a run in the tournament, which is why I talked about how they could lose to North Carolina, so we're going to go with UCLA here. And then Purdue versus Kentucky. Again, Kentucky has struggled recently, but I think they're able to get out of that, escape that, and I think they're able to win this game up against Purdue. Again, Purdue very streaky, very, very streaky. If Purdue is on point, if they're playing the best basketball, they might win the whole fucking thing. But I'm just not too sure that's going to happen, so I'm going to go with Kentucky. And then we get to the Elite Eight. So we're going to go back up to the top here in the West. I'm going to go ahead and shrink myself so I can put myself in a better spot here so that you guys have the best view as possible. So here, Gonzaga versus Texas Tech. While my heart wants Texas Tech, I want to see Texas Tech make it again. I think Gonzaga is just too strong. They're going to make it. Then Arizona versus Villanova. Again, I think that Arizona is super good, but I think Villanova could also beat them, especially if Giuseppe is playing excellent, drilling down those 3. So we're going to go with Villanova. So now we got Gonzaga and Villanova here. And then down here, we got UCLA versus Kentucky. I like Kentucky here. And then Kansas versus Auburn. I'm going to go ahead here and lean with Auburn. The safe pick is certainly Kansas, but I don't really think that we're going to see a Final Four where it's 1-2 versus 1-2 on both sides, right? That seems pretty unlikely. So here, we're going to go ahead and go with Villanova. I think Villanova is going to be able to beat Auburn. And then we're going to go with Gonzaga versus Villanova. And my champion is going to be Gonzaga. They are finally able to get over the hump here, and they win. Gonzaga wins. Again, this is just a projection here. I'd have to do some research. 69-67 here. Gonzaga. Go Zags. So the Zags are going to win here. So that is where we are going to go in today's video. Again, let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think about it. Maybe your picks are a little bit different than mine, but I'm going to go with 69-67. Gonzaga Villanova, Gonzaga wins. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. I'm going to take this off the screen. Hit that subscribe button down below. Hit that like button. I love you guys all so much. I hope you do have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, guys, good boy.